Now we'll transition over to our next award winner, who is also doing amazing work in the world. And now that she is inspired by Quandra, I'm sure she'll really be taking the world by storm. And that's so the next award is the Rebecca Rice Award. And this award is to recognize alumni of Antioch College who, by their actions, achievements, and leadership, have distinguished themselves and their alma mater. The nominees for this award should be persons who have excelled in their vocation or field of study. The award is named for the first female trustee and longtime faculty member of the college, of course, Rebecca Rice. Bethany Saltman, the winner of the award this year, considers her time at Antioch the most important influence in her life, impressing upon her the power of ideas to oppress and liberate. Bethany worked with the Women of Antioch to write the original sexual offense prevention policy. She graduated with a BA in literature, then received an M.F.A. in poetry from Brooklyn College in 1994. She published poems in national journals and taught writing at CUNY schools, including Medgar Evers College. She began presenting academic papers on composition and whiteness in the basic writing classroom and was offered a position at Polytechnic University. After starting coursework towards a linguistics doctorate, Bethany realized that her scholarly questions were actually spiritual ones, so she left the program and moved into Zen Mountain Monastery, where she met her husband, Thayer Case. They married in 2001. In 2020, Random House published her first book, Strange Situation, A Mother's Journey into the Science of Attachment. Acclaimed as, quote, one of the best science books of 2020, unquote, and, quote, a fascinating mix of memoir and the history of a major revolution in the scientific theory of the relationships we form in our first year of life, unquote. Strange Situation is the first of its kind, a memoir that reveals the intimate details of how the science of attachment and the Buddhist concept of attachment intersect in one woman's life. Bethany is incredibly grateful for what she learned at Antioch, how to think, feel, and write as if her life depends upon it. Because now she knows for sure it does. She's going to be in conversation today with Stacy Gochnar, who is also from the class of 1992, which again is my class. So a very good year, I think, for Antioch. After a career in social sciences and as a psychotherapist, Stacy is currently on a long-term owned plan late in life co-op as she shifts professional direction. Stacy is also the proud friend and of the award recipient. Stacy and Bethany, take it away. Are you able to?
I'm unmuted.
Okay, you're all set.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for that, April, and thank you also just for organizing all of this. I in preparing, I was just thinking about how sweet it would have been if this was a non-COVID time, and we were presenting this award in Yellow Springs to you, Bethany, and having festive drinks in town somewhere after, and all the things, and that sounds so nice. And then at the same time, I'm also appreciating that if it were normal times, then it might not be the same group of us that are able to also gather in this other unusual way. So it's kind of, I don't know, yeah, I wish it were different, and I also can appreciate the kind of silver lining at times of this current era that we're in. Oh, and it's so sweet to see people here. Like I know this award is for you, Bethany, but I just quickly like say hi to my dad and my friends and all the people who are like here to celebrate you with me, because they know how much you mean to me and how proud I am of you. So, to begin, I thought maybe I would like to hear you speak, if you don't mind, to kind of what it's been like for you to publish your first book in this very unusual time. And I also am curious if you have found that there's any silver lining to publishing in the time of the coronavirus.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. First of all, thanks to everybody. And as my work is about being in a family, I have a family here right now, who they're trying to get out the door. So I'm a little, guys, can you guys go? So that's happening. I have dogs. I have, there's like a world here. So I appreciate everybody bearing with me as I'm a little, trying to figure this out. So what has it been like to, and I loved meeting you, Quandra, if you're still here. That was such a pleasure. And I feel so fortunate to be in a lineage with someone like you. So yeah, what has it been like to publish my first book during this crazy time? Well, um, hard to even speak to that. It's been because I've never published another book, So the whole thing has been exciting, complicated, difficult, stressful, but thrilling in a lot of ways. I miss being able to. I've gotten a lot of wonderful feedback from people, and so that's always nice, to get in the inbox. But it's sad to not be able to be, meeting people and talking to people and feeling that experience firsthand. But I feel grateful that I was able to do it at all, and really lucky that this is, that I was given an opportunity to write this book and to put it out in the world. And yeah, so it's been a mix, a very mixed experience.
Yeah, can imagine that. You know, as your friend, it has been such a pleasure to have an intimate awareness of your process through the sort of your research of this work and your the writing and sort of just the way that it's unfolded over time. And um, again, as I was thinking about this interview, I realized that I'm unsure of when your interest in kind of pursuing this question, sort of your individual curiosity about attachment and kind of what was happening for you. Like, I'm wondering if you could speak to when did it move from just your own interest in your own research to becoming clear that it wanted to become a book, or it was material that you were gathering that you felt like had a value to be shared.
That's so funny. I think this is that's a great question, and it's related to how I think about Antioch, actually. I think that one of the things that I really learned at Antioch, first of all, I learned to think. I mean, I should back up a little bit and say just how, as April read in my bio, um, my gratitude to Antioch is big. I was not planning on going to college. Nobody was telling me I should go to college. I wasn't a good student. I didn't care about school. I was not considered smart. And that was fine. I hadn't, again, sort of like the book question. It's like I didn't know any different. That was just sort of who I was. I was a poet. I wrote poetry. I was a very bad girl. I was a juvenile delinquent. I was complicated, and I had a lot of energy, but I wasn't putting it into academic pursuits at all. And then in high school, all my friends, I was always friends with kind of smart kids. And I lived in East Lansing, Michigan, which there was a Lansing connection. So that was cool. I grew up in East Lansing, and a lot of my friends' parents were professors. And people would always ask me, like, "Oh, are your parents professors?" I was like, "No, my dad's an auto parts salesman, unemployed, and my mom is a stay-at-home mom. And then when they got divorced, she worked in retail." And so this one friend of mine who sat next to me in my English class, in which I was famous for smoking a cigarette in the back of class. That was my claim, one of my claims to fame. And while the teacher was out smoking, by the way, it wasn't while the teacher was there. But so he said to me, "Where are you going to go to college?" And I was like, "Nowhere." And it was true. I hadn't applied to a single school. There was no college in my future. And he said, I think you should go to Antioch. And I was like, what's Antioch? And he was like, just check it out. You should go. And of course, this was before, online anything. So I said, was it a real school? Like, is it a real college? And he was like, yeah, it's real. And I was like, well, then they're not going to have me because why would any real college accept me to their school? And he was like, just trust me. So I sent away for the material. I got it and I was like, this is interesting. And my mom took me to visit for a weekend and I was like, holy moly, this is incredible. There are people just like me in this place all together. And I had an interview with the woman at the admissions person. I guess I had applied and sent in an essay and then I went to do my interview and she said, we really liked your essay. And so we're going to give you a chance, even though your grades are truly abysmal. Now, at the time, I thought, wow, this is great. Turns out, it wasn't the place at that time. There was some, the academic achievement of my peers was not always through the roof anyway, but I'm really still very honored that they, saw that I was a good fit there. So I went, and it was the only school I applied to, obviously. And I went in the winter because I hadn't, planned on going to college. So I was basically in my application process during in the fall when everyone else was already going. So that was that's my Antioch origin story. And thank you, Antioch. Wow. But so what I learned there was that actually I did in fact have a brain. I could think, and that I learned how to take myself seriously. That was what I got from the professors. Like they actually cared about what I was thinking. They were encouraging me to explore ideas. It was just like mind blowing to me. And so this question of when did I start to think about my sort of personal obsession with attachment? It was a personal question because I had my daughter and I was confused about my feelings, and I started to learn about this science of attachment and thought like, wow, this is super intriguing to me. I want to learn everything there is about it. And it was sort of it wasn't long before I started to realize like, oh, because I'm so interested in it, other people will be too. And I knew that even though I was a poet and didn't had never written anything longer than like 50 pages, and writing a book was very difficult. I knew that I wanted to expand upon it and have this be something that was a larger project. And so that's what I did. But so that thing of like, if I'm interested, other people will be interested. I really thank my professors at Antioch for teaching me that my interest was legit.
Thoughtful answer. I'm wondering, kind of relatedly, I mean, for those of us on the call who are not from Antioch, there's a quote a motto of the college from Horace Mann that is be ashamed to die until you've won a victory for humanity. And I guess I was wondering, as you have now put out this kind of huge effort at making a contribution to a cultural conversation, if you have are you able to experience any measure of that, sort of like a contribution in that to that degree in that regard? And also, if you were to articulate what you would want that contribution to be, if you could give language to like what do you hope would be the outcome of this work that you have shared with the world?
Hmm. Oh my Lord, great question. I definitely don't feel like I'm ready to die because I've made a contribution to humanity. um, so God no. I feel really grateful that I have, well, depends on what day you ask me. Some days I'm grateful that I have that as a mission. Other days I rue the day that I ever heard that because I feel so un incapable of meeting a goal like that. Um, so no, I don't feel like I've won anything for humanity, but what would I want to, and I don't mean to be unduly, I'm not trying to be hard on myself, but no, I actually don't experience it that way. I mean, anybody who's really gone whole hog into any field, that like the more you know, the more you don't know. So I feel like I did a tidy job of sort of exploring one small area of a gigantic field. And so I'm proud of that because I taught myself everything I know. I'm not a scholar. I mean, I am now, but I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a PhD in psychology. None of that. And I really um, taught myself a lot. So I'm proud of that. But I don't feel like it's the end of some, topic for sure. But I would hope that other people would find it interesting and dive into it for themselves. I am really proud, actually, of bringing Mary Ainsworth, the creator of The Strange Situation, into light. And back to the COVID question, I'm sad that she hasn't gotten more play because of COVID. And the book, it's been a little bit, the people who have needed to read it, I think that's happening. But Mary Ainsworth was such an incredible force, and she hasn't gotten her day yet, still. But there's hope. I'm still pushing for that. And what would I want people to get out of what would I hope my contribution would be? There is the scientific contribution of Mary Ainsworth's work and her biography and her incredible contribution. But also, from a more kind of personal point of view, it's about de-shaming motherhood and de-shaming human feelings on the broadest level, and that we, particularly mothers, we are taught that we're conditioned to believe that the experience is a narrow one, and that we have our parental feelings are generally supposed to be of a certain kind, and we can all fill in the blank. We kind of know what that story is. And what I learned through the science of attachment is that not only, I mean, I knew from my own personal experience that that wasn't accurate, because here I was, a mother with different feelings. So I already blew that open. But I learned that what actually creates this sort of gold standard secure attachment is the ability to metabolize our entire human experience. And this really was in line with my experience as a Buddhist, but it gave a sort of scientific um, cap to what I already felt was true, and it helped me have a confidence in my life to know that, not that it gives me permission to be a toxic person in the world, but to have feelings of all kinds is human, normal, and the way to present myself as my best self as a mother and as a person is to learn how to experience my feelings in a true and honest and authentic way. And that's what a secure attachment is. And so that was a surprise to me, and that is a surprise to other people who think about attachment, for sure. And so I would really like everybody to, be kinder to themselves for having the feelings that they maybe they're not happy with, or they're not proud of, or they find difficult or challenging. Because not only, women oftentimes have a hard time doing that for ourselves, but we can do things for our children. And so that's what I always tell people. If you can't take care of yourself or be nice to yourself for you, do it for your kids. And hopefully you'll get around to understanding that you should be able to do it for yourself. But we have a tough road to hoe in life as women, as mothers. And, the conditioning is strong to put ourselves aside and to expect very particular things of ourselves.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And I also as someone who's not a mother, and maybe as a recommendation for anyone else on this call who's not yet familiarized yourself with Bethany's work, I felt like it was such a welcome, inspiring tale of real liberation. Like that, there's something in it about kind of how to sort of look through a lens of wellness, of health, of vitality at our own experience. It just felt like a real shift from a paradigm that I think can emphasize how are we broken? How did we come from hard times? How does that still influence us? You know, just and not that there's not value in that, but I feel like there's something about the way that you were able to through exploring attachment and through showing Mary Ainsworth's work and your own process to really offer such an inspiring tale of the, what I took away is that most of us are absolutely well in all of our complications, in all of the tough times we may have come from. That fundamentally that for most of us there's a kind of secure base, and um, I've just found that so inspiring.
Yeah, like Mary Ainsworth says, as she ends her book Infancy in Uganda, 'cause she did her original research in Uganda. She says, despite the alarming incidence of neurosis in the world, and boy, is that true now, parents by and large do well. And there you have it. And there are many ways to understand that, and there are so many different kind of cultural norms, and the diversity of human experience and the ways that we parent is so different around the world. And the beautiful thing about doing this work was that it pointed me in the direction of something that does work. And we talk so much about resiliency, and but what is that thing that can be resilient in a person's life? And attachment, the attachment system is something that is that wants to work. That's what one of the professors that I studied with talked about a lot when I was studying the strange situation. The attachment system wants to work. Children want to feel comfortable with their parents. Parents want to create a feeling of safety for their children. They may or may not be successful or optimal or perfect, or they're definitely not perfect. But there's this thing, and it's part of our evolution. Like if this thing weren't happening, we wouldn't continue to survive, because it's the attachment relationship that creates a feeling of safety with a caregiver, and it's intrinsic to who we are. And so it was been a beautiful opportunity to just see this thing within so many crazy people, so many crazy families, including my own, to see this machine, this mechanism, this thing that just wants to keep working and keep connecting and keep finding love and keep orienting toward light and beauty and connection.
Yeah, yeah, so inspiring. Uh,
Good.
Related, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about the quality of delight that
Mhm.
Mary Ainsworth discovered, and just to kind of, I feel like that also has really stayed with me from the work.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Well, so she was, of course, like a super brilliant scientist, and she was an expert at looking at patterns and seeing patterns out of nothing. And she's the one who started to see that some dyads, some mothers and babies were securely attached while others seemed less securely attached, meaning that one that the secure base of the parent was functioning really well for the child so that they could go out and explore and then return and explore and return in a sort of healthy way. And what she found in the securely attached pairs was this quality of what she called mutual delight. And for her, that was a technical term. She was actually investigating that and seeing that in all of these different families. And so I have really taken that and run with it and sort of gone the other direction. Like if you, and people ask me all the time, like, well, how do I know if I'm secure? I'm sure I'm insecure. And first of all, I say, if you're talking to me, if you're DMing me the details of your child's insecurity, 99% of, I'm 99% sure that you're secure and your kid is too. Because if you're paying that much attention to attachment, that's a hallmark of a securely attached person, is that you value attachment. You're probably not perseverating and worrying and obsessing about your kids, reunion behavior if you're avoidant because you're thinking about other things. But people ask me all the time, how do I know if I'm secure, and what if I'm not, and things like that. And so while Mary saw delight as a marker of secure attachment, I like to think of it the other way too and say, well, if you're concerned about it, first of all, don't. It's not like that. But if you would like to move yourself in a direction of more security or more autonomy as an adult, there are a few things you can do. One is practice mindfulness, because this is one of the only ways that has been studied that leads to a more secure attachment as adults. Any kind of presence, becoming more present in mind is a really wonderful way of doing that. But also, like, try to cultivate more delight in your life. And how can you do that? It's so simple. I've been writing sometimes about this, but just like the most basic things, like food you like, paint your wall a color you like, figure out what you like. Azalea and I, that's my daughter, she's 14 now. We love to watch The Real Housewives of New York, or actually we watch Beverly Hills. I watch New York by myself. She and I do Beverly Hills. And like, people are like, what? That's so unwholesome. That's so trashy. And it doesn't matter. If you like to play video games together with your kid, enjoy it, delight in that. Like, have a cocktail, just like delight, like really find some sources of delight in your life. And if we begin to let that in more, that's going to do a lot of that really important work of helping us feel more connected to ourselves, which helps us be more connected in our relationships.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Me
And
too.
and I love the way that to me, again, not as a parent, but it seems like it can let a parent off the hook for so many other spaces where people can evaluate themselves negatively. The kids on the screen too long, you're not feeding them in the right nutrition, like all the things, the things, the things. And I feel like your work kind of reduces it down to this, to like this quality of like, the more the parent can find those areas of joy, everything's going to be okay. Like the rest of it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
And I just think that's so brilliant and and liberating.
Yeah, and the fact is those things don't matter. Like if you want your kid to go to an amazing school and that's really important to you, you want them to go Ivy League, great. Then you've got your work cut out for you. You have to do what you have to do to make that happen. That has nothing to do with attachment. Nothing. If you want your kid to be like really quote healthy and eat organic food and never be on a screen, like great, like totally cool. That has nothing to do with attachment. Attachment is the core aspect of how one orients toward the world, and in relationship to the world, in such a foundational primitive way that it's hard to even notice. But that's what I'm interested in. The rest of it is gravy, and everybody gets to do it however they want to do it. But people often confuse like being a good parent with these very specific behaviors that are in a certain socioeconomic milieu. And attachment has nothing to do with, I mean, like, you don't have to be rich to be securely attached, that's for sure. And you don't have to be, college educated, you don't have to be a Trump hater, just saying. It's possible to be anybody and be securely attached. And so I just find that, the most important thing. And the rest is up to everybody to figure out on their own.
Yeah. As we're before we open it up to questions, I just want to shift back to the Antioch history a little bit, and just to say that I didn't realize at first that the Rebecca Rice Award honors the first female trustee of the college and a female professor. And that felt to me so appropriate that you'd be winning an award that honors, uh, feminism in some regard. And, as was mentioned in your bio, you were an instrumental member of a group of students that co-created the sexual offense prevention policy back when we were in school. And for those of us on the call who may be less familiar, that was a policy that got some national attention in actually a kind of disparaging way. It was quite ridiculed, and the world was not yet ready for that policy. However, more recently, it now is, and exactly, see people pleased about that. Yeah, as am I. And I just wondered if you would like to speak at all about what that has felt like to see sort of early efforts that you made um, now be regarded in a different way. And as you mentioned, April was also part of that process. So, certainly welcome your comments too, April. But anything you'd like to say about sort of how that continues to live in you?
Yeah, that was, wow, what an experience that was. So, at Antioch, I worked so hard on that thing, and it was really, really important to me. And it was a random occurrence. Like, I wasn't even part of the women's study, or I wasn't part of the women's center, but I saw a sign one day that said, like, women have been raped on campus, and nobody's doing anything about it. Come to this meeting. And I was like, shit, okay. So I went to the meeting, and then was just like, I think they needed a writer actually to help do some of the languaging around it. And I was like, I can do that. And I had my typewriter and like smoking my cigarettes and um, you know, the whole bit. And so I just got like sort of thrown into it because I loved the hive experience of like all these women, these young women, just deciding to take care of matters. And I really felt like this was hugely important. So I was never set out to be involved in that way, but I couldn't really help it. And so it was really important, and it felt, it was hard, really, really hard at the time. I remember that. And it was hard to talk to, not everybody was in agreement, like by any stretch. And so I was really putting myself out there. Some friends who were on co-op and then came back were like, what the hell's going on? Like, now you're this like total firebrand and you're obsessed with this thing. And I almost, I didn't do well. I had to take a bunch of incompletes in my classes. It was a big deal. And then to have, so then I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to focus on school. I graduated. And then when we left, that's when it took off. I graduated, we left, we went to Brooklyn, and then it took off, and it was lampooned on Saturday Night Live, and it was really devastating. And I was actually really ashamed of myself and of that work in a way. Not ashamed of the fact of it, but I felt a lot of tension. And I wrote about this for New York Magazine when the whole thing came back out. Well, so cut to, I was like ambivalent about it. I wasn't totally confident that I had done the right thing. I had some doubts about the work, and and then when I sort of put it aside for many, many years. And then whenever that was, Barack Obama started talking about affirmative consent. And I was like, wait a minute, that is the Antioch policy. Like, what the hell is going on here? It was like a total, like, from like the devil, like everybody hating it, to Barack Obama, the king of the universe, just like casually mentioning um, affirmative consent. And so I really took stock in that, and thought back to that whole experience. And I wrote an article, an essay for New York Magazine about my complicated relationship to that whole thing. Because when I was at Antioch and having those strong feelings and doing all that work, like I said, I really stand by the work, but I was not, it was not a totally clean experience for me. I was working out a lot of my shit, and I was really angry. I was like trying to feel powerful. I was trying to feel successful. I was trying to feel empowered. And I feel so grateful that Antioch held us in that way and again took us so seriously and really respected our wildness and took us to heart. And but as an adult with many years of Zen practice under my belt and just really a desire to be really honest with myself, I had to cop to some complex motivations in that experience. And so it's been a really good thing for me to go back and look at it again and come to terms with the mixed feelings. Again, that's a hallmark of a securely attached adult, that we can have mixed feelings. And so I do have mixed feelings about it. Now I feel 100% proud because I did that work of kind of integrating some of those more shameful pieces of it for myself. And I feel really proud and so proud of Antioch and so proud to be part of that incredibly important movement toward consent. Now my daughter, I mean, consent is just such a basic thing in her life, and I'm so proud that she knows that I played a very big part in making that, normal in kids' lives today.
That's really great. I'm going to jump in. This is April,
Please.
right? That in fact, because Stacy stole my question, but then it was nice that she invited me in a little bit. So one of the, I'll just say a couple of things about it. One is when you're in your bio where you say the power of ideas to oppress and liberate. To me, that has this sort of profound truth about the sexual offense policy and that creation. And it's too complex to talk about here, but it really profoundly captures that difficulty, that it was so hard. And part of that was because we were inventing language that did not exist. And we were confronting cultural and sexual stereotypes and intimacy in a way that was very threatening to most everybody in some way. And so now it's so interesting to be back on campus. And to your point, when the state of California passed their active consent law, I knew it was directly related to the work that we had done here.
Yeah.
And to me, that felt the moment where the victory for humanity was
Yeah.
achieved. And not that I'm done, right? To your point, I'm not done with doing that, but I feel like I can die when it's time without shame, and because of that work that we did.
That's
And
really
and
good.
now people have such a positive feeling about it that, and it's kind of interesting to see it on the other side where people are like, oh, like in their minds, it was so easy for us. We just kind of walked up and wrote something down on paper and took it to the ADSL, and voila, there was a sexual offense policy, and we all got along and loved each other a whole way through. And I say, no, that's not realistic. And if that's what you're looking for in these, fights to really make change, you'll be disappointed because it's personally challenging.
Very.
And it should be, right?
Yeah, but that's a really good point. I mean, I'm so proud of that work. I mean, I am proud of the attachment work in my book and stuff, but like when it really comes down to it, like that is what we did there is so radical and has like utterly transformed a paradigm.
Yeah.
So that is something that if I could, take a tiny bit of credit for that, it was a hive, man. It was not about me or April or anybody. I didn't even know who I was working with. Like I couldn't even like people were, I was getting like interviewed by the New York Times and stuff, and they were like, "Well, tell us about, like who else was on the team with you." I'm like, I don't barely remember. Not because I didn't care, but because it wasn't even about that. It wasn't about us as people at all. It was just like, who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Get it done. This was no social media. There was no pictures. We didn't care. It was just like, it was so beautiful in that way. Do you remember it that way, April?
I do. And one of the things that resonates with me is that now when I was coming back, people were asking me. So I was looking through my files and stuff for all the things because I'm a keeper. So I keep, especially when I think it might be historically significant. So I found this sheet that I typed when I think towards the end, I knew that we were in the middle of something that was really, really important. And so I started tracking. I was like, we have to track this. So I started writing down all the meetings that we had. And I did. I
Wow.
wrote down like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I didn't mention what we talked about. I didn't mention who was there. I didn't mention like what I was documenting was look at the flurry of activity and
Yeah.
energy and all of that. But it's just interesting, like to think in hindsight, what you thought was important at the time, in the end, can shift, right? The importance can shift to other things. So now, fortunately, there's other documentation out there, obviously.
Right.
But it was funny that that's what I thought was important to capture.
No, it's interesting. I think it speaks a lot to how we think about things now.
Mhm.
That like when we do something, and I'm as guilty as anybody, there's this documenting from a personal point of view that I think is, something to be noticed,
Yeah, exactly.
as opposed
Now,
to it's like what's getting done.
right. Now, are there other folks who have questions? We have a few more minutes. You can either put them in the chat, your question, and Anastasia will ask them, or you can put the word stack in there and I'll unmute you and you can ask your question.
I did see a question from a friend, Patty McCormick. Trisha, I don't know, would you like to ask your own question to Bethany?
Thanks. Oh, now I wish I went to Antioch.
It was awesome. Oh my God, was it ever?
My question has to do with making your own ambivalence about motherhood and your attachment questions public. And I'm especially curious about it after hearing about the experience that you went through with the sexual consent policy getting so much negative attention. You were so brave to put that out there. So I'm wondering, what hurdles did you have to get over, if
Hmm.
to be so public again about something that is so private, especially in a culture where motherhood is like apple pie?
Great question. I also have a lot of experience. I've mentioned like I've lived in a monastery. I've been a Zen practitioner for a long time, and that's a very sort of, it's so much not what people think, but there's an element of like really confronting. You work with a teacher very intimately, and there's a lot of like, do I get it? No, go back to your cushion. Do I get it now? No, you still don't get it. There's a lot of rejection involved in this training. So I'm pretty inured, if that's the right word, to I'm sure Quandra can tell me, to being rejected publicly. Like I'm kind of like, I don't really, to say I don't care would be wrong, but like I'm okay with that. And when I feel really strongly about something. So with the attachment stuff, and people ask me that all the time, like, wow, you're so brave. I feel like it's the least I can do to throw myself out there if it's going to help someone else. Now, the one thing that that really did keep me up at night, and this was the only thing, was the idea that I might hurt my daughter, that she would read those words and feel hurt to know that how much her mother struggled when she was born. And so I had many people read it, but specifically I had her godfather read it with her just in mind, like put her in your heart and read this book. This is what I asked him to do. And imagine her experiencing this. And he and everybody else who read it said, I think what she's going to see more than anything is how much you love her. And so, that was, I just had to trust people because I really wanted to tell the story because I know, and now I know, I hear from so many people every day that it is helpful. And, and I asked her if she wanted to read it when she turned, I think, 13. And she said, maybe later. So she has really clearly said that she does not want to read it, that she does not want her friends to read it. So when it came out, I wrote an email to all of our friends and said, please do not let your kids read it. She is asking for some internal privacy about this, like from our little group. Like don't talk about it, don't read it. And everybody was cool with it. Her school wanted to invite me, and she was like, hell no, you are not going to my school to talk about this. And she's a genius. I mean, when someone asked, I just wrote an article recently about this, and someone once asked her, so Azalea, what's attachment? And she said, well, Like when you're at a playground and like you hear all the kids and like the swings and all the noise, and then over everything you hear some kid yell, "Mom!" She's like, "That's attachment." And I was like, "Wow, okay, mic drop, you win." And because she's exactly right. It's that thing that like, over everything else, you're gonna call to your mom when you need her or him, or it has nothing to do with gender. And so that's the secure base working. So anyway, that was the thing that bothered me and still worries me more than anything. But I think we're okay. And it will be hard for her when she decides to read it. Knowing her, she may never. She's the most like disciplined person. If she doesn't want to read it, she just won't. But I worry about her getting hurt when and if she does. And I feel confident that our relationship is such that I'll be able to absorb her sadness about it, if or her hurt or her confusion, and yeah.
Bethany, I wonder, kind of related, but the other side. There's one more question, but I thought since you're on this topic, would you like to talk at all about how your mom has read the book?
Oh yes, that's been really interesting. She was so excited and she read it a bunch of times and she's so proud of me. um but she's had a hard time. The reviews always say like Saltman's cold and distant mother, and she's just like, oh my god, it's like so painful for her to read that, even though that's really not what the book is about. And many people, including me, see her as the hero of the book because she's the one who, well, I mean, it turns out that I'm totally securely attached, even though I thought for sure I was insecurely attached. That's the moral of the story. But I learned that through all of this research and going into all these trainings and getting these tests. And then she ends up doing her own. We do an adult attachment interview on her, and she's securely attached too. But she doesn't really care about any of that. She just hates that I felt unseen ever as a little girl, or that I didn't like the food that she packed me in middle school. She's a mom and she's hurt and upset that those things bothered me, and she's bothered by it. So it's been, she's been incredibly supportive and loving and proud, but it bugs her to have that piece, those aspects of her life as a mom out there. But like a good, autonomous adult, she can have her mixed feelings.
Yeah, I agree. I think she is the as a heroine in the story, and it's such a beautiful telling of who she is as a parent. But I can also appreciate how complicated it might be to have that be shared publicly with everyone.
Yeah. So she's a real warrior for letting that happen. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I think there's one last question from Athena.
So, Bethany, this is kind of interesting. Just kind of headed off my question is whether or not, your work ages, and that attachment as a parent going forward. I just had my grandson, first grandson in June.
Congratulations.
And, just looking at my children becoming adults and having their own children, does it transfer well? It seems like there's your mom, that's my mom when she was 9 in my mother's house. And that I try to do the best with the attachment piece. And then here I am looking at it. I'm hoping that it kind of shifts over. My mom didn't have it as good like your mom, but I felt like I had the wherewithal. But then now I'm looking to hope that they have it as well and it doesn't transfer.
Yes, it certainly does. So this is one of the big headlines, news flashes of the whole attachment world, is that with a 75% probability, our attachment pattern, the way that we use our parent as a secure base, will be transmitted to our children, and so on and so on and so on. So that does not mean it's a life sentence or anything like that. We can always shift, but there is absolutely an intergenerational transmission of attachment. And this is a really important part of the work. Is that what you're asking? Oh, you're muted.
So yeah, it's interesting because the person to person, I think, is so important. Matter of fact, CBS had a story about how social media is destroying American democracy, no matter what party you're in.
Hmm.
And what I've been able to do since June is do Zoom, or Hangouts with my grandson, and he's at 5 months, and he's already, I think I do. So he kind of gets a sense of who I am, even though I can't see him. But also the transition I see with my daughter being a first time mom, and the insecurities of that,
Sure.
and trying to tell her, she's doing a good job, and,
Yeah.
and just, it wasn't perfect, but,
No.
hey, 4 out of the barn, they're doing okay.
Exactly. I was on a Zoom meeting a while ago and someone said, "Oh, it sounds like what you're saying is that attachment, this delight thing is about feeling like you're the apple of someone's eye." And I was like, "Exactly. That's exactly it." So I've been using that a lot. And I love these like very vernacular ways of talking about it, just like simple sort of common language or whatever, because it's really like that, to just like what you're doing with your grandchild over Zoom. um, Human beings need to feel like someone is, the way I always talk about it is like, where your bread is buttered, like someone is gonna like do it like you like it, you know and not all the time, but like a little bit sometimes, because you're born and you're alive and you deserve it, and because you're the apple of their eye, and they're going to get distracted and they're going to get irritated, but they're going to be able to like bring it when you're really hungry, or you really need it. And yeah. So yeah, absolutely. It matters a lot how we engage with one another, but it doesn't have to be this big complicated thing. It's really just it's a heart experience.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for the question.
Well, that's great. I'm gonna move towards wrapping us up. So we're a little bit over time, but that's not a problem. And you all stuck around, so clearly that was the best choice. But now I've let you guys have access to your microphone. So why don't we all unmute ourselves and give our 2 award winners a round of applause. So for Quandra and Bethany.
Sandra, woohoo!
Congratulations to you both. And thank you so much. What a wonderful event.
Thank you all for coming.
Tonight, don't forget, we've got the Village, a common for the common good. So this is a conversation with some folks at the Village about collaborations between the college and the Village of Yellow Springs. So join us at 7:00 for that event.
Thanks, April, for doing this.
Sure thing, Bethany. Thanks for coming. I'm so glad you were selected for this award. And you too, Quandra. Great.
What a joy it's been to be with you all, to meet Bethany, to see my friends. A joy.
Indeed.
Thank you, Quandra. I'm so glad to meet you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.